It is a Nairobi morning, and the city is yawning into wakefulness, the kind of hour when the sky is a faded ribbon and every sound stretches across damp tarmac. Ngong Road holds its breath between one traffic light and the next. A young mechanic named Ayo Barasa kneels beside a weary old probox, coaxing a stubborn wheel nut with patience, learned from engines and from ordinary survival. Oil shadows his fingers, but his movements are careful, deliberate, almost musical, the way people move when they trust their hands more than their luck. He has planned a plain day, 2 cars to fix, 2 meals to earn, a stop to buy sukuma for his sister before heading home to a single room that keeps out most of the weather and some of the noise. A silver sedan glides to a halt with a soft, apologetic squeal. The driver steps out, and the air seems to straighten its shirt around her. She asks if he can help with a tire, and he answers yes without ceremony. The jack rises, the car lifts, dust spins in lazy halos, and the city watches with one eye open and one eye still dreaming. He does not ask her name because the road does not require introductions. When the tire sits right and the last nut settles with a final sure turn, she offers to pay. Ayo shakes his head because sometimes the road is kind to us and sometimes we give the kindness back. She smiles, pulls a plain card from a slim case, and offers it with an economy that suggests everything is already understood. The name is Wanjiku Nduta, and a small judiciary seal rests in the corner like a quiet witness. The card slips into his pocket without sound, but it falls through him like a coin into a deep well. 2 days fold and refold like receipts forgotten in a pocket. A call arrives from Soft Harbor Systems, a technology firm with tasteful lobby plants and glass that behaves like water. They ask him to come in regarding a company laptop that was under his temporary care. The meeting room faces a sparkling slice of the city where office towers look like they are trying to learn humility from clouds. Inside, Jabali Mwangi sits with a suit that has memorized his shape and a voice polished to a legal sheen. Beside him, Shiko Maina, the security supervisor, watches the room the way a night guard watches the perimeter, patiently, as if patience were a profession. Jabali explains the laptop is missing and says that narrative clarity will be appreciated. Ayo gives his small steady account, service ticket raised, issue fixed, laptop placed in the cage, key returned. The air pauses while the city below continues without their drama. Jabali asks again for a clean story, as if truth were furniture you could wipe down until it reflects only the correct faces. Shiko's eyes flicker the way streetlights do before rain. The next morning he wears his best shirt, which is also his only crisp shirt, and steps into the high court with a spine that knows how to look brave. The room smells of polished wood and old paper, a scent like rules remembering themselves. When the judge enters, the room sits up as if summoned by an invisible conductor. The nameplate on the bench is a small brass door that opens in Ayo's chest. Honorable Judge Wanjiku Nduta, the woman he helped by the road, now carries the authority to weigh his days with a steady voice. Fate writes in loops and underlines with coincidence. The company's counsel narrates the loss like a storm front. Data at risk, proprietary code in danger, clients who do not sleep when anxiety keeps watch. The story is told with the solemnity that expects agreement. Ayo speaks for himself because poverty teaches improvisation, and he will not improvise the truth. He lays out his sequence like tools on a cloth. Ticket, fix, cage, key. The judge asks for substance, witnesses, records, footage. Time will be allowed, she says, but mystery will not hold the court hostage. This is a place for reveals, not riddles that refuse to end. On the courthouse steps, a journalist named Zara Otieno waits with a recorder the size of confidence. She asks a question meant to understand and also meant to travel. Framed or foolish? Ayo says it depends on the angle. Zara replies that angles are her profession, and her laugh sounds like paper that might soon become history. Nairobi moves around them, indifferent and intimate. A friend who never quite commits but shows up on time for important things. Night borrows the road and the air thins to a quieter kind of noise. Ayo returns to the same shoulder of Ngong Road where the jack lifted and dust spun. He kneels and lets his fingers read the ground the way some people read the sky. Something small taps his knuckle, a weatherproof capsule like a rider's secret. Inside sleeps a microSD card, and inside that sleep may be an answer. At his friend Kiptu's one-room fortress of optimism, they slide the card into a battered laptop and watch folders open like careful flowers. Access logs, night shift, camera 12. The footage is grainy and stubborn, the way old truth can be. A figure moves with a laptop bag and a gate that does not belong to Ayo. The access card blinks approval at an hour when approval should be sleeping. Kiptu leans forward like a believer at midnight and says that a walk is a signature and this one is not Ayo's. Shiko waits in a parking level that smells like dust and metal calm. Conscience is a difficult uniform beneath a corporate blazer. She knows Jabali prefers stories like freshly mopped floors, reflective and free of footprints. But nights are not floors, and truth is not water that drains away, because someone points it toward a hole. She meets Zara and says that kindness to the truth means letting context tug at clean edges. Zara nods because the city has taught her how whispers carry farther than declarations. Day 2 is a different color. The gallery is fuller. Murmurs arrive early and leave late. The microSD card is presented and the prosecution pounces on chain of custody with the quickness of hunger. Found on a roadside like a chapati, they say, contaminated by life. The judge does not clap for theatrics. Even a dropped chapati is still bread, she answers, and the chain can be tested. Hashes are counted like prayer beads, timestamps read out as if they were verses. Metadata confesses what people hesitate to say. The footage plays, and Ayo watches a figure move with a lilt his body never learned. From the benches, David, the junior technician with a decent heart, stands because sitting has become too heavy. That is not Ayo. Jabali whispers for him to sit. The whisper is smaller than the light spilling from the screen. In the corridor, Jabali corners Ayo during recess with a smile that believes itself generous. Plead to negligence and go home without bars. Pay a fine the size of a bad month. Ayo shakes his head. The truth is not pleading today. The reply is not brave for applause. It is the sound a bolt makes when it meets the correct torque and decides to hold. Back in Kibera, the air tastes of charcoal and first tea. At Mama Mboga's stall, the vegetables shine like small victories, and rumor travels faster than a matatu in a single lane. Layla, his sister, keeps faith like a folded note and insists he eat before speaking about anything difficult. Neighbors want the decent man to be believed because believing him is also a way of believing in themselves, and in a city that too often measures them with the wrong ruler. Zara and Shiko pull at threads nobody wants touched. Access logs reveal shadow logins that pace behind scheduled sweeps like a thief walking 2 steps behind a tourist. An attempt to delete camera 12 archives looks less like tidying and more like repainting a sign to point in a safer direction. The smell of an insurance play lingers along the edges of the conversation. Nobody says scandal, but the word breathes in the room. David returns to courage where he left it and corrects his earlier statement. Pressure existed, he says. He is finished lending his spine to anything that bends the wrong way. The third day turns the courtroom into a loom. Every strand finds a cross, the roadside card and its stubborn data, the internal logs and their accidental honesty, Shiko's reluctant testimony that advances anyway, David's corrected statement that no longer trembles. Jabali's vocabulary remains rich, but the cloth he can weave with it becomes thin. The judge asks a plain question about camera 12 and whether instructions had been given to clear away an inconvenient quarter. Silence bounces off the walls because rooms designed to respect voices also respect the sound of none. Jabali's face, which had been a mirror, shows its first crack. Rain begins with the manners of a good guest, tapping glass without demanding attention. The decision is measured and heavy. Ayo Barasa is not liable. The matter goes to the Director of Public Prosecutions with new names and questions that are no longer shy. The gallery exhales in a single soft gust, and for a heartbeat, the city seems to join them. Laila closes her eyes and says something only the air needs to hear. Mama Mboga smiles like a recipe because in neighborhoods like these, comfort is cooked and shared and eaten slowly. Weeks later, the wheel of consequence turns the way wheels always do, stubbornly and with purpose. Ayo returns to his workshop. His hands remain the color of work, but dawn has moved into his chest. He tightens a wheel nut, and the torque wrench clicks with the gratitude of a door that has been oiled. He says little and notices everything. Across the city, Judge Wanjiku keeps a small spare kit in her trunk and a folded thank you note she may never send because some words are more true when kept close. Morning light rests on rooftops without asking permission. He thinks often about that first radio he opened as a boy, its brass heart ticking while its shell lay beside it like a shed skin. He suspects people are more themselves when honesty lifts the casing and shows the parts that move. The thought confesses itself while he walks the long stretch of Ngong Road with no destination beyond distance. Traffic breathes, stalls, argues, forgives. A vendor counts change twice and hands him a samosa wrapped in yesterday's headlines. He pockets the coin and an extra measure of caution to spend on another day. Kiptu rides up and kills the engine with a flick that looks like magic and is only practice. He says the city has been noisier since the verdict, like metal laughing. They sit on a low wall and talk about engines until the words turn into lullabies. Justice is a machine with many parts, Ayo says. People are both grease and grit. Kindness is not a luxury, Kiptu answers. It is a lubricant that reduces wear between lives. They fall quiet, and the city finishes the conversation with a whistle, a child's shout, a vendor's call, the hollow thud of a football against a gate. Every sound says we are still here. Every silence says listen harder. Shiko transfers to a different unit where the reports are shorter and the nights have fewer arguments. She files a statement that reads like a map someone can follow without getting lost. Zara edits an episode for her podcast, trims away scandal that adds heat but not light, leaves only the shape of a story that can stand under its own weight. David learns how to say no earlier in a conversation. He takes a different job where the logs are dull and correct. He sleeps better, which is a kind of salary. One afternoon, Ayo watches a school group gather at the foot of the courthouse steps, herded by a teacher with a voice that could conduct buses. The children inspect the facade as if it might wake and speak. He hopes their futures will be kind. He hopes their truths will be punctual, but if they are late, he hopes they will be heavy enough to matter. The teacher asks what a court is for, and Ayo answers in his head without moving his lips, for measuring stories without letting fear hold the ruler. The light changes, and the crossing hums, and everyone moves, as if the city has agreed on something without saying it out loud. He buys spare bulbs and new blades for a torque wrench he loves more than is rational. He replaces the cracked face on a customer's gauge and refuses a tip that reeks of apology. When the shop grows quiet, he inventorizes sockets like a man counting blessings. He tells himself to go slow with luck and fast with kindness, because most repairs require both. A thought lives near him these days, like a loyal dog, present and patient, ready to move when called. The right thing is rarely the easy thing, but it is the thing that stops rattling when you tighten it properly. At dusk, he stands at the road's edge and watches the city rehearse for night. A silver sedan rolls through a green light somewhere far off. In the workshop, a stubborn nut yields to reason rather than force. The wrench clicks. He says bolts and answers tight, and the answer is not a catchphrase so much as a promise to the day ahead.